Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at Better Call Saul. The series finale just dropped, which means it's time for me to put on the lab coat and give a scientific breakdown for why this show is a masterpiece. Now, I already made a whole video comparing Better Call Saul to Breaking Bad, giving my opinions on both, so I'm not going to be comparing the two in here. I'm just going to be focusing on Better Call Saul. So I think it's an absolute must-watch, but it's a show that I can recognize not everyone's going to like, and that's fine. It's not a crime to have shitty taste. It's a show that's a slow burn, and that's just not going to fit everyone, but I could really appreciate it. It was just a show that I got really engrossed in. I didn't watch it until season 6, like week by week. I had to catch up from seasons 1 through 5. Over the course of like a month, I binged the fuck out of it. I went so hog wild, I loved it. Now for the Moist Meter, I'm mainly going to focus on season 6, since it's the final season and that's what just finished, and I've already talked at length about 1 through 5 in that video I made comparing this show to Breaking Bad, so I don't want to just repeat myself, so I'll give you the cliff notes here. The show absolutely slaps. Again, it's a slower show, and that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. It's not going to be everyone's spaghetti and meatballs, but if you're someone that's just looking for an extremely well-written story and extremely well-written characters, this show is absolutely going to be for you. I think there is no other show in television history that has this level of writing that Better Call Saul does. It was just an incredible fucking ride from start to finish. Now let's get into it and spread some peanut butter on this sandwich. Season 6 was broken up into 2 parts, with a hiatus in between where there was a few weeks with everyone's dick being soft, just scratching at the neck, waiting for it to come back and conclude. And now it has. I think the first half of season 6 was better than the second. That's not to say the second was bad, because it was by no means bad. It was still amazing, but the first half had something very special about it, and that is Lalo Salamanca. I'm going to be getting into some spoilers here because, obviously, it's the series finale, so in order to give my thoughts, I need to at least talk about what happens a bit. In the first half of season 6, Lalo Salamanca is this omniscient boogeyman that's haunting the characters. He can be anywhere at any time and kill you if he doesn't like the way you smell. He's just this looming miasma of misery that at any moment could just show up and kill, and god damn it, he does. The mid-season finale with the execution of Howard was probably one of the most stunning moments I've ever had watching a TV show. When that episode ended, I just sat there for like 3 or 4 minutes just digesting what I had just seen, just marinating on it. I couldn't believe it. It came out of nowhere, but it's not like it was just shock for the sake of shock or anything. Like, it felt like, damn, this is some Lalo shit. Like, it absolutely made sense, and it was so beautifully done. You know, Howard was a character where you were never, like, rooting for Howard, per se. He was framed as a bad guy, but he was never actually a bad guy. Howard was a really interesting antagonist where he was just, like, a nice guy overall with some moments of being a douchebag, but overall he was just kind of a neutral, decent person who just always got used and abused by Saul and Kim and everyone around him, and then eventually just fucking murdered. And he didn't deserve any of it, really. This show just does an incredible job with every character of making you care. So even someone like Howard, who for 5 seasons we've been kind of like, ew, Howard's here, that means it's going to be trouble for Saul, you still can't help but feel awful when he's taken away. I think Lalo Salamanca was really the most important component of this show. They needed someone like Lalo to be even more evil than Saul and everyone else in the cast. Because Saul's not like a hero. He's not a good guy. No one would ever watch this show and be like, damn, you know, Saul Goodman, what a fucking saint. He's driven by compulsion. He hurts everyone around him for selfish reasons. He's a bad guy. But he's a really well fleshed out bad guy, where you are still rooting for him most of the time, but then you always see him go a little too far, just go over the line. And I think Lalo was just the perfect villain to stack up against him. And they also introduced another extremely strong character, Nacho. He's not in season 6, but I do just want to mention him because that's another new character that wasn't in Breaking Bad that absolutely shines in this show. I just wanted to at least put that out there. But back to season 6, I think in the first half, Lalo is what amplified it to being such an incredible first half. That mid-season finale still being probably one of my favorite episodes of a TV show. And then the first episode back for the second half of season 6, I thought was an absolute banger. That's when Lalo spoilers, huge spoilers, Lalo gets beaten. Lalo gets killed by Gus in an incredible showdown. I actually thought that entire episode was so fucking perfect. I couldn't be happier with how they concluded Lalo's story, because this, of course, comes before Breaking Bad, so you know Lalo's not there. You knew he was going to die at some point, but you didn't know how, and I thought they executed it flawlessly with Gus doing it. Until the very end, Lalo was a menace. He had outplayed, outmaneuvered, outgunned everyone at every point throughout this entire show, and even in the episode where he dies, he was still on top until the very last second with some lucky shots that got him. So he doesn't go down like a bitch or like a pussy. He doesn't have like an underwhelming death. He has a really fitting death that I thought served the character very well. And he gets banished to the Shadow Realm with a smile on his face. He laughs himself into the afterlife. A really great conclusion to Lalo, but in my opinion, I felt the show kind of stagnated a bit after that. The following 2 or 3 episodes, while not being bad by any means, I don't think had that same level of impact that the first half of the season as well as the first episode of the second half had. It focuses on Saul post Breaking Bad. So now we're following Saul as he's undercover as Gene. So Gene is Saul Goodman after Breaking Bad, after, going through the identity change and everything and being on the run. So Gene works at a Cinnabon and he's starting to dip his toes back into a life of crime. He gets a little team together and they're pulling off small jobs for some money. And it's fun to watch. It's like silly little side quests, and it has a lot of humor in it. It reminds me of like the villains from SpongeBob when they form evil. Every villain is Lemons. Like, obviously Saul's the only one here with experience and the only one that actually comes up with the plans. But there's a lot of moments where the other characters do some wild shit. For example, one of them, while stopped at a stop sign and driving a taxi, is just hanging out for a while. Some cops pull up behind him. They don't have their lights on or anything. They're just sitting there eating fish tacos behind him, unaware of anything going on. And the taxi driver, who's working with Saul, panics, shifts his car to drive like he's fucking, shifting and Fast and Furious, ready to engage the nitrous oxide boosters, steps on the gas and immediately crashes into a parked car in front of him, which gets him arrested. This was actually the catalyst for Saul's demise. So Saul had earned the trust of this guy's mom. She was an elderly woman and he had lied to her about a missing dog, and then they became friends and then formed this group that was robbing people. But when her son got arrested, Saul did what he does and he lawyered the shit out of it. He came up with a plan to get him out, so he called his mom, and his mom got really suspicious because she doesn't know this is Saul Goodman. She knows this guy as Gene, just an ordinary guy working at Cinnabon. So she starts wondering how he knows all this and eventually connects the dots that Gene is Saul Goodman, and then she eventually calls the cops on him, which leads to his arrest. This is a super fitting way for Saul to go down, by the way, because in the beginning, you'll remember Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman, Jimmy had made a career out of working with elderly clients early on. He manipulated a lot of elderly people early on. So to finally get busted because of manipulating an elderly woman again, I think is just a poetic, great finish. I thought that was really well done. But my point is, I didn't find the adventures of Gene and this ragtag group of misfits robbing people to be super interesting. It was entertaining, like I enjoyed it, but it felt like it lacked aim. Which, again, you would expect. It was just kind of like a refractory period after the first episode of the second half of the season. Again, I don't think it was bad or anything. I don't even think it was lackluster because I still enjoyed them. But it just felt like it lacked an overall purpose. It was just watching Gene get back into Saul Goodman's, helm, taking it back and, doing what he does best. Fun, goofy adventures, a bit silly at times, but it all did have a purpose in the end, where the mom connects the dots, calls the police, and they arrest Saul Goodman. And that brings us to the series finale, where Saul Goodman, yet again, shines. He's able to strong-arm everyone legally, just laying down this fucking smackdown of law, and then even gets Kim out there to witness it, but decides to throw it all away and confesses to every single one of his crimes that we've seen him commit throughout both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. He makes a very public spectacle about everything that he's ever done wrong, and the series ends with him in prison. That's all she wrote. I think it's an extremely fitting conclusion. A character like Saul Goodman never deserved a happy ending, but this is about the best that he can get. Kim visits him in jail as his attorney, and the two get to connect one last time, and we see Jimmy in prison looking longingly outside at Kim. I think it was a fucking beautiful finale. Like I said, I enjoyed the first half more than the second half, but I love where the second half eventually ends up. I think Better Call Saul is a must-watch show that I recognize not everyone's going to appreciate, but I do think it's worth everyone giving it a chance. It is such an incredibly well-written show, I can't think of anything like it. I fucking loved it, so plugging Better Call Saul into the Moist Meter, I'm giving it a 95%, and I can't recommend the show highly enough. That's about it. See ya.